All right, just to go off the enzyme lesson that you had earlier this week in EDIO, we wanted to bring you a little Jell-O experiment. If you didn't know, Jell-O is powder protein, and when you boil it, it will solidify into a solid that Ms. Kohler will talk to you about later. This is our control dish with the Jell-O in it. We did diet blue, so it's easier for you to see. And we're going to go through a couple of fruits with some enzymes in it that are going to break apart those proteins, and we're going to talk to you about why that happens.
It all began one fall day when Miss Fisher heard about a lesson that was available online. It had to do with gelatin and enzymes. So this is the gelatin that we use to do our experiment. It's called Nox because it has no added colorings and no added flavors, so it's just straight gelatin. There is nothing else in here that could interfere with our experiment, so it's just pure gelatin that we're going to be adding fruit to. So we took the gelatin and we mixed it up and we added it to 8 different types of fruit. We also added it to one empty petri dish to see what would happen when no fruit at all was added, to see if that would have any effect on it. So the hypothesis is that some of the fruits, pineapple especially, will stop our gelatin from becoming solid like Jell-O. It'll keep it liquid. So out of these 8 fruits, we're going to see which of these 8 stop the Jell-O from solidifying. So you could do this at home. We prepared our hot water and we added food coloring to it. The only reason we added food coloring was to make it more visible under the camera. You don't have to do this. You could leave it clear. But we added the food coloring just so that it's easier to see. So this is our boiling water and food coloring, and you can see our gelatin envelopes in the background there. So when that was ready, we mixed it all up and we poured it into the petri dishes containing the fruit, and we put it in the fridge to solidify. We left it in the fridge for several hours, and then we came back after several hours to test our results. And coming up next are the results.
Okay, so here are the results of our experiment. This was our control right here. It's hard to tell because there's nothing in it, but it doesn't move when we jiggle it, and we'll show it to you then. You can actually, you can go like this, and it doesn't spill or anything like that. All right, so with the strawberry, the blue, by the way, was just food coloring, so that has that's not flavored Jell-O or anything. So the strawberry, if you try, it doesn't, it jiggles a little bit because it's Jell-O, but the strawberries really don't move. They stay in one place. So the strawberries did not break this down. Then banana, same thing. It doesn't really move. The bananas don't really move around. Stayed solid. Orange doesn't really move. Can't move it around. Doesn't jiggle. Stayed solid. This is plum. Same thing. Doesn't really jiggle. Doesn't really move around. When we get the kiwi, though, and take this off, the kiwi jiggles quite a bit. You can see up here, the kiwi is really jiggling. So kiwi has a little bit of an enzyme that breaks down Jell-O, but it doesn't have a ton because parts of it got solid, but parts of it stayed liquid. Okay. The ginger you can see we have on a paper towel, and that's for a reason. Okay, the ginger stayed extremely liquid. So you see I'm jiggling this and everything is just shifting around in there. Ginger has that enzyme that stops gelatin from forming into a solid. And actually, this is the chemistry teacher in me. The Jell-O doesn't ever get completely solid. It's always considered a liquid because it will always take the shape of its container eventually. Right, so the pineapple, this is practically still water right here. I mean, this did not change at all. So if you want to make Jell-O dessert with fruit in it, pineapple is probably not a good thing to add to it because this is what pineapple does to it. So pineapple has the highest concentration of this enzyme. And we also tried mango, and according to our research, mango should have also caused the gelatin to be liquid, but it did not. Jell is not moving at all. In fact, I think it's more solid than the one with the strawberries in it was. So either our research was wrong or there was something with our mango that stopped it from doing its job. Maybe the mango wasn't ripe enough. Maybe it needed to be in smaller pieces. Maybe we needed to blend it up in a blender. We're not really sure, but for one reason or another, the mango did not cause this to become liquid.
Mrs. Beaver, Mrs. Fisher, we are a sucrose molecule. Remember, a sucrose is a disaccharide made up of a molecule of glucose and galactose. We are bonded together, and an enzyme can actually rip us apart. We have an active site, and the enzyme comes in and binds to the active site, which causes the disaccharide to break apart. I am now an individual glucose molecule and an individual galactose molecule. The enzyme goes away, is not changed in the reaction, goes away to catalyze another sucrose molecule, break it apart, digest it, so it can go throughout the body to be used as an energy source.
Hi, it's Mrs. Fisher again. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the demonstration that Mrs. Bieber and I did. We were showing you that when glucose and galactose are together, they make sucrose, and the enzyme come in and break us apart into two different sugars, into the monomers. Okay, so in our instructions today, when we talked about it in the experiment, we were talking about there are 3 different amino acids in the Jell-O proteins. What happens is the actual enzymes in the sugar break those polypeptide bonds apart between those 3 amino acids. 3 amino acids, now I wrote them down so I didn't forget, glycine, proline, and hydroxylene. So then they're split apart and you have 3 different amino acids opposed to one long polypeptide chain.
So in today's video, we showed you an experiment that we did with gelatin where an enzyme broke down the gelatin and kept it from solidifying. The name of the enzyme that is found in pineapple that caused this to happen is called bromelian. So in this short PowerPoint, I'm going to talk a little bit about bromelian, what it is, why it does what it does, and then some real-world applications that people use bromelian for out in the world. Pineapples are from a group of plants called bromeliads. Generally, bromeliads are flowers that people use to decorate their homes. However, in this case, pineapples get a cluster of berries on top of their stem, and each of these little points on the pineapple is actually a miniature berry. So when you're eating pineapple, you're eating a berry. So it's a cluster of berries on top of the stem. And these berries contain the enzyme bromelian. So bromelian is an enzyme that breaks down proteins. It is a protein digesting enzyme. So it works in a manner that's similar to some of the digestive enzymes that are in your stomach. So you can see in the picture here, this is a generic enzyme. It's not any specific one, but the big gray part right here is the enzyme. Here is the active site, and then the substrate in this case would be the protein. So the enzyme comes along, it encounters proteins, the active site binds to the proteins and then causes the amino acids to break apart. So wherever there's a peptide bond here, bromelian breaks down that peptide bond. So the effect that had in our experiment was it broke the peptide bonds in the gelatin and kept the gelatin from becoming solid. So what does this have to do with using bromelian in the real world? Well, manufacturers use bromelian for a variety of things. And just to let you know, not all of these have been evaluated by the FDA, so not all of them are found in commercial products. Some of these are things that people do at home, so we don't know 100% if they definitely work, but these are some of the things that people use them for. The real common use for bromelian is as a meat tenderizer. So a lot of times you see at restaurants, you see like steaks or hams or anything like that served Hawaiian style with pineapple on it. The reason you use the pineapple is not so much for the flavor. You use the pineapple because it tenderizes the meat. Bromelian is also used to treat inflammation. So some people use bromelian compounds in medications used to treat rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is a disorder where your joints become inflamed. Some other people that have a disease called fibromyalgia, which is just general inflammation around the body that causes tiredness and a lot of pain. A lot of people use bromelian to help treat their fibromyalgia. A lot of people make their own cough syrup using pineapple juice, and the reason that they do that is that the bromelian acts as an enzyme and breaks down the proteins in your mucus. So if you have mucus in your throat and in your esophagus that is causing you to cough, you drink the pineapple juice, the bromelian breaks down the mucus, and then the mucus is no longer causing you to cough because it's been broken down by the bromelian. There's also research being done in using bromelian to break up blood clots. So a large component of blood clots are proteins, and the bromelian in pineapple juice can bind to the proteins in blood clots and cause those to break apart. Obviously for that we wouldn't be using straight pineapple juice, we would be extracting just the bromelian. But there are some scientists that are doing research into using the bromelian to do that. So the most common use for bromelian is as a meat tenderizer. So when people use pineapple juice on meat, and this is commonly used on steak, but it can also be used on pork or chicken, if you take the meat once it's cooked and pull on it, you can actually see strands in there. Those strands are muscle fibers, and those muscle fibers are primarily protein, and the primary protein in them is collagen. So bromelian binds to that protein, breaks down the peptide bonds, and when it breaks it down, it actually causes the meat to become more tender. So that meat becomes more tender, and it's usually more desirable for people because people don't really like chewy meat. They like their meat to be nice and tender. So you use that to tenderize the meat. You want to make sure that you don't do it for too long. If you would try to use it as a marinade, like most people when they marinate things, they do it overnight or for several hours. If you were to do that with a steak and pineapple juice, it would actually reduce it completely to mush. And that's not really what you're looking for. So when you're using pineapple to tenderize meat, you really only want to put it on for maybe 10 minutes before you do the cooking. Now, we said about proteins, if you heat up proteins, they denature. Denaturing means that the shape of the protein changes and it no longer functions. So the enzyme bromelian is a protein because all enzymes are proteins. If you cook the meat to at least 158 degrees, it denatures that enzyme. It changes the shape of the enzyme. The enzyme bromelian no longer functions, so it stops tenderizing the meat at that point. So you put it on the meat, you let it set for 10, maybe 15 minutes max, and then when you cook the meat, it stops that tenderizing action from happening. So raising the temperature to at least 158 degrees is going to stop the bromelian from tenderizing the meat. Now that's a good thing for us in terms of cooking. It's not necessarily a good thing for the people that actually harvest the pineapples. So if you look at this picture over here, you see these men that are harvesting pineapples. They are wearing bright red gloves. And they are wearing gloves for a reason. The reason that they are wearing gloves is the bromelian in pineapple juice actually causes damage to your hands if you touch it for long periods of time every day. So if they were to be working in the pineapple fields without their gloves like people used to do, the bromelian actually starts to break down the proteins that are in the skin of your hands. And these people would develop a lot of problems with their hands. They would develop open sores. They would actually experience a phenomenon where their fingerprints would temporarily go away because the bromelian was breaking down the proteins that form the ridges to make their fingerprints. Now, if you gave them time, their hands would heal back up, their fingerprints would come back. But this is a known safety concern for people who work harvesting pineapples. So now they have safety precautions in place, and one of those precautions is wearing gloves to keep the bromelian from digesting your hands. Now, if you bring a pineapple home and you cut it up in your house and you're just handling it for 5 or 10 minutes, you're going to be fine. These are people that were exposed to it all day, every day. It was coating their hands and it was sitting there for hours at a time, and that's what was causing all the damage. But because this is known to happen with the hands of people who harvest pineapples, beauty companies have picked up on this, and they have actually started adding bromelian to beauty products as an exfoliant. An exfoliant is something that causes the dead skin to come off of you. You generally do that on your face. A lot of people find that exfoliants make them look younger, and that's why they're desirable in beauty products. And because bromelian breaks down those proteins in the dead skin on your face, it helps to pull the dead skin off quicker. It's not necessarily a good thing, though. We need that dead skin on our face for protection. But a lot of people will do anything in the name of beauty. So they're using that same principle for what's happening to the pineapple harvesters' hands to exfoliate the skin on their faces. Well, that is it for our lesson on enzymes and bromelian. I hope that you learned a lot, and I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. And from all of us here at the biology team, we will see you in class soon. Have a great day.
Brought to you by the biology team.
So here's Miss Watching Fish. Mrs. Fisher. Cut.
Hi, it's Mrs. Fisher again. Wanted to talk to you about the little bit of the